So today I want to share with you some principles that I have used and learned across the various development of communication process that we've been through. And these principles can also be used and applied to the various ideas that we develop as teams. When a big campaign launch is happening for our brands, how do we evaluate these ideas? How do we evaluate any new creative that comes from the client side? Very often I've seen that we usually end up giving very subjective feedback. Typically, it's fantastic, the ad is amazing, or it's okay, not so great, so on and so forth. But are we able to articulate actionable feedback on communication? And I think as experts on communication, it is imperative for us not only to have a point of view on communication, but also how can that communication drive and channelize our thinking? How do we give constructive feedback in a very structured manner? So today I'm going to share these principles with you. I'm hoping that at the end of the session, I'm going to leave you with a simple trick, a shorthand that will allow you to evaluate ideas and communication going forward. Of course, it will require some practice, but believe me, if you get it right, it will keep enabling you and helping you in giving the right feedback and understanding communication very well. Can we move to the next slide, Josh? So here's a very popular campaign. I'm sure we've all seen this campaign, right? The Dove campaign, Real Women for Real Beauty. It's got various awards. It drove the brand sales crazy. A very well integrated campaign with the brand. Next slide, Josh. Here's another example of a very recent campaign. A very popular and talked about campaign by Nike on Colin Kaepernick. It drove a lot and a lot and a lot of interest across the world. Did some fantastic work for the brand. Have you ever thought about what is common in these successful campaigns? Next slide, Josh. I think that is the critical thing to kind of think about. Every time we see a campaign and when we kind of give it a thought on, hey, why did this campaign do so well? Why is this creative doing exceptionally well? Is there something different that stands out for this campaign? Like the famous Steve Jobs said, you can only connect the dots later. So can we use this experience to connect some of the dots and create some principles that will help us in our future campaigns? I think the single question to ask is what is common amongst these successful campaigns? And the answer to that is in the next slide. A very simple word called art. Of course, all these campaigns and creatives have some beautiful art in them, but I'm also going to show you how we are going to use this simple three-letter word art to objectively channelize our thinking and get constructive feedback in a very structured manner on any communication or creatives or ideas. So, what does art stand for? A stands for authentic. What do we mean by authentic? If we ask these basic questions on any creative that we see, next slide, what are these basic questions that we should ask? Is this creative in line with brand synergy? You know, every brand has a certain personality, has a certain character. All large brands always have a brand guideline or a playbook or a brand key. The question to ask ourselves is whenever we see a creative or a communication, is this in line with that brand synergy? Is it competitively distinctive? It obviously needs to be different from what competition is talking about. Otherwise, you're going to get mixed up with what competition is talking about. And is it credible? Is the source of this communication credible? Is the brand talking about the specific communication credible? So if it answers these three questions or any of these questions, I would say, the creative is authentic. That's what the A stands for in the art. Let's move on to the next one, which is R. Next slide. What does R stand for? R stands for relevant. Is our communication relevant? Are we talking to the right audiences? And I'd like to take a small example here on typically, some of the challenges that we face as a media agency. The media mindset versus the communications mindset. Next slide. Yeah. So if you look at this slide here, on the left hand side is essentially what a media mindset is all about. Whenever we get a brief from a client or we're talking to our clients about our audiences or target group for that communication or brand, what we usually care about is the demographics. Male 25 plus, SECA, born in a particular city. There is also another angle to it, which is the psychographic. On the right hand side of the slide, you see two men born in 1948, super rich, married but no longer with their wives, have older teenagers, often spend their holidays in Switzerland. Now, if we look at this slide as a whole, what does it mean? We're talking about our audience and getting to understand more details about our audience. However, it could also be that both these audiences are very different. So it's very important for us to understand who this communication is relevant to. Who are we really talking to? And unless we deep dive and understand these questions and understand our audience in more detail, we will not be able to get the right direction of the communication. Next slide. Here are these two men. Now just imagine a creative that was made just basis the previous slide. Both these are demographic twins, right? There's Prince Charles and Ozzy Osbourne. They both have the same age, they both have very similar demographics, but attitudinally, culturally, and value wise, they're very different. A communication or a creative that is relevant to Prince Charles may not be very relevant for Ozzy, and vice versa. So we need to ensure and evaluate, is our communication relevant to the audience that we are speaking with? Next slide. Here's what relevant talks about. These are the questions relevance should answer. Are we speaking to the right audience? Is our ad, is our communication in the right context? That's another very important thing. Uh, let's look at this COVID-19 example. A lot of brands, they were very skeptical about should they run their current communication in the current scenario, because there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of fear, and as a brand, you want to come across empathetic. You don't want to come across selling your product in that situation. So a lot of brands did take a step back to ensure that the context of their communication is correct. That's what relevance is all about as well, right? If you ask these questions, that are we speaking to the right audience? Are we in the right context? And very important, is it rooted in popular culture? As global brands enter local markets, it's extremely important for these brands to understand what is the popular culture in these local markets. What is it that audiences are talking about? What is it that audiences connect with? If we get a tick box on these three questions, then we can say that our communication is relevant. So we get the authenticity tick box, we get the relevance tick box. Now let's see what the T stands for, right? The T is talkable. Of course, we want our communication to be talkable, right? Of course, we want the communication to create a buzz in the market. Buzz is one of the important attributes that drives market share for brands. And we all want our communication to be talkable. But how do we really evaluate whether a communication is talkable or not, whether a creative is talkable or not? Here are the questions that we should ask on whether a creative is talkable or not. Does it have a creative magnifier? Is there a big idea in that campaign? Can we visualize the brand benefit, right? When you see a creative or when you see a communication, are you able to visualize what the benefit of this brand is? Put yourself in the shoes of the target audience or the consumer and see what you visualize as a benefit of this brand or as a benefit of this communication. Last but not least, is it share worthy? Will I share this with my friends and my families and tell people about it? Will this drive conversation for me? If it answers these questions, I can tell you that that particular piece of communication is extremely talkable. If it has a great creative magnifier, if the brand benefit is visualized, and if the communication is share worthy and drives conversation, it definitely is going to drive a lot of talkability for the brand. So this is, the three key pillars or the three key principles that I wanted to share you about: authenticity, relevance, and talkable. If we go to the next slide, what we're going to do in the next slide is I have a very, very quick quiz for you. This is a brand I worked on, Heinz Tomato Ketchup. I've picked up three creators from the internet. Okay. And this was for the 100% natural campaign. Now let's assume You're the brand, and the creative agency comes and shows you three different options. Okay, you're running a 100% natural campaign where the objective is to communicate Heinz tomato ketchup being 100% natural. Which creative would you go for? We have three options over here. We have option one, and the copy is there on your screen. We have option two in the center, and we have option three. I'll give you all 2-3 minutes to think about this. Apply these art principles over here. And I want you all to type in the chat box on which option you think is the right creative to go ahead with at this point in time. Which one you think is most authentic? Which one do you think is in line with the synergy of the brand? Which one you think is relevant? And which one you think is talkable? Of course, all three creatives I would say are very exciting. They've run in different markets. Yeah, I'm seeing some answers coming in. May I request more people to participate? Unless you participate, unless you force yourself to ask these questions and evaluate communication on these creatives, you'll not be able to get it naturally. So the idea is to kind of give it a thought. Does it qualify on A? Does it qualify on R? Or does it qualify on T? Does it qualify on all these three principles? And if it does, which one is that? I will share with you my thoughts in a moment from now as more people are participating. Fantastic. I'm seeing a lot of responses coming in. We have some going for one, with some going for two, with some going for three. That's nice. That's good to hear. So there is still, there are still differences in opinion, which is okay. But at least for now, we are now able to think in a very structured manner. We are now able to give feedback to our teams, to our clients in a very structured approach on which part is missing. I'll give it another minute. Yes, there are more responses coming. A lot of ones I see there, and twos and threes also coming in. Okay. Another minute before we go ahead and I share the answers with you. Two. Two definitely I can tell you is very talkable because it's saying happy birthday Playboy. So I will definitely not deny the talkability of it. Okay, so here are my thoughts on this. Josh, can we go to the next slide? I would say I would pick one as the answer. That's the campaign we actually ran in the India market, and we got some fantastic results, friends. I was able to deliver 4x growth on the brand for this campaign. First time ever in the history of India, we saw such strong growth coming in for the brand. But let me tell you my thoughts on why the first one is authentic, relevant, and talkable, right? So if you look at what authenticity stands for, is it in line with brand synergy? Is it competitively distinctive? And is it credible? Yes, it definitely has a tick on all these three. If you look at it from a relevance perspective, does it speak to the right audience? The Heinz tomato ketchup audience would usually be moms with kids across most markets, right? Does it speak to that audience? Yes, it speaks to that audience. Is it in the right context? It's a 100% natural campaign. We have a stack of tomatoes that are shown in the shape of the Heinz tomato ketchup bottle. So there is a very nice integration done in terms of the context, right? The benefit of the brand is very clearly visualized. It seems so natural and talkable. Does it have a creative magnifier? Yes, the creative magnifier here are the sliced tomatoes, which seem so real to us. We can very clearly visualize the benefit of the brand. And definitely, this is share worthy and will drive conversations. We had moms talking to their friends saying, "Hey, did you see that new ad of Heinz? It's so real. It just looks like there are tomatoes out there which are stacked up, in a ketchup bottle." Now, moving to the second creative, which is about the Playboy ad, right? Yeah, the second creative. Let's try and evaluate the second creative on the three principles. Is it authentic, in line with brand synergy? I would say no, because as a core, as a guideline, the brand is not a brand that is on the sensual side. The brand is not a brand that talks about sensuality or has fun around these areas. And therefore, I would say the synergy with the brand is definitely low over here. Competitively distinctive? Yes, it is. Is it credible? Maybe not, because it's not in line with brand synergy. Now let's look at R. Why have I put red on R? Does it speak to the right audience? I would say it does not speak to the right audience simply because my audience is moms with kids. You don't want a communication that is talking about Playboy, and it will definitely not be relevant to moms with kids. And therefore, I would say the context of this ad is not right, right? From a T perspective, yes, definitely it's a talkable creative. Many of you did put three because it's exciting. You have the tomatoes there, and we all know what they kind of symbolize and visualize. But the A and R are red over here, and therefore we would not go ahead with a creative like this. Now let's look at the third option, where you have these French fries walking towards the ketchup bottle, right? If I look at it from an A perspective, is it in line with brand synergy? I would say it's fine. It's in line with brand synergy. There's nothing negative about it. It is competitively distinctive. There's no other competitive ad that has done something around this. And definitely it's credible because it comes from Heinz tomato ketchup. Heinz is, in many markets, is a very tasty ketchup, and therefore the fries are attracted to it. If we look at it from an R perspective, I have given it a red. And why is that so? I would say because we were looking at 100% natural campaign. The context of the 100% natural didn't come out so well in this creative, right? If the objective was telling our audiences about taste, this would have definitely done well. But the objective of this campaign was to communicate 100% natural. And therefore, the R part over here is red. It's not relevant. It's not in the right context, right? Let's move to T. Does it have a creative magnifier? Is the brand benefit visualized? It's so clear, right? You actually have French fries that are attracted towards the ketchup bottle. If it was a taste-led campaign, definitely the brand benefit was very easily visualized. It does have a creative magnifier, and it is share-worthy and drive conversations, but it's not relevant, and therefore I would reject the third creative as well. So this is how we would go about evaluating creatives and communications. I would sit with all the brand teams and the brand managers, and we would just take magazines and various television ads, and we would sit down and have discussions on using these principles. How do we apply ART to each of these ads? Does the ad seem authentic? Does it seem relevant to our audiences? Is it talkable? And that's how, with a lot of practice, we were now able to then deliver very constructive feedbacks to our agency partners on what should be changed, how it should be changed, and why it should be changed. Last slide, Josh. So that's the conclusion of my session. I'm open to any questions here. I would strongly urge each of you to use these principles, practice it with your teams. It's a very simple shorthand I've given you: ART, authentic, relevant, and talkable. Thank you, everyone.